Today we are going to do a check-in on how my reading is going so far for the month, and weird timing a little bit based on when you're seeing this versus when I'm filming it, because I'm filming it slightly before we're halfway through the month, but you're seeing it slightly after we're halfway through. You know, February, just, it gets a little tricky. But, oh my goodness, this month, I'm gonna tell you, is on track to maybe be my best reading month ever. Did I just jinx myself? I don't know. But I have given out so many 5 stars and 4.5 stars. I am just living my best reading life right now, and I hope this continues. But I do feel like by saying this, I have doomed myself to hate things for the rest of the month. We'll see. But I can't talk to you guys about all of these because, like I said, a lot of these are things I want to gush about in my end of the month check-in, so I will talk about those first. So I was only supposed to read one book in the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, and then Leanna I don't know how it happened. I read them all. I don't know how it happened. No one does, but I finished it, and these are HarperCollins titles, so I dearly hope, at the time I'm filming this, the agreement has been tentatively reached but has not been signed. So until it's signed, still holding reviews. But I sincerely hope that is not the case by the end of the month so that we can fully talk about this experience. But this took up a lot of my reading because, like, they chunky. So I read those. And basically everything else was like in between. So other two things I'm definitely not going to talk about here because A, you've seen them in a vlog. Please go check out the Reading the Goodreads Choice Award winners for the last 10 years series. So I participated and I had the mystery thriller category. So I read all 10 of the last decade of Goodreads Choice Award winners. And I'm not going to say it was super successful, but I love doing it as a collaboration. And so please go check out the playlist with all the other great creators who read all the other categories. And yeah, I think I've decided that I'm going to also at the end of the year do a reading all of the nominees for the mystery thriller category as a way to bookend the year. But anyway, these were both disappointing from that. And yeah, these I'll talk more about as disappointments at the end of the month. I guess, so I've not been able to tell you guys about the rest of the ones that I read for that. So I'll just mention that I also read Into the Water by Paula Hawkins last month and gave it 2 stars. I found it distasteful. I DNF'd The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins, I think just because it's just not my kind of book. I'm glad that I tried to read this again because I DNF'd it when it first came out, and I'm glad that I attempted again because I feel like I have better language as to why this did not work for me. So this I DNF'd, but was a fruitful attempt. Then I had to read against my will the Pill Hodges trilogy from Stephen King. Was not to my taste at all. You can see full thoughts in that vlog, but the worst of them was the first one, Mr. Mercedes. The best was the last one, End of Watch. Not sure if some of that was just I was so happy to be done with it, but I gave this 2.5, this 3, Finders Keepers 3, and End of Watch 3.5, so. And then I gave 3 stars to Inferno by Dan Brown as part of that project too. It was not good. It was not bad. It was the least good of the ones in that series I've read from him, but it was fine. I mean, you know, entertaining, vague, pseudoscience, pseudo-historical nonsense, like, it was fine. So yeah, that was that project. Please go check out all the other creators' videos. You can also check out mine and look for a companion video at the end of the year to read all the nominees. Say a prayer for me. I don't know why I'm such a glutton for punishment, but hopefully I will have read more of them so it won't be as many books. I don't know. Here's hoping. 2 other hits that I'm going to talk about at the end of the month. One is A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. So good. 4.5 stars on that. And then that's coming out in March, by the way. And then Artec by Honey Phillips is a surprise, 4.5. So we'll talk more about that at the end of the month. I will say Artec is the first in a series, which is like a sci-fi romance alien western that is inspired by Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. And it is campy nonsense with lots of snowed in tropes. So I also have so far have read Benjar and Callum, and I'm in the middle of Drakkar, which makes me think of Drakkar Noir, that cologne, anyone? But anyway, so that's been like I did that as palette cleansers from Robin Hobb, and that has been a very good palette cleansing exercise. Okay, things I can tell you about more fully right now. I've got 3 arcs I can tell you about. So one is, oh gosh, What Have We Done by Alex Finlay. And I would say this is like fun, but not as high quality as I feel like his first book was. I would say that I've been going down a little bit with him with each book I've read. It's entertaining still. Like, I will still seek out his books because I think that he tends to have tropes that I really like, and I tend to mostly like his writing. I just don't think this was as successful as it could have been. So the setup basically is that we are following a few different people who all grew up in a really abusive group home, and something happened in the group home that all of them have vowed to keep a secret. And all of a sudden somebody is like coming back and trying to kill them or like ruin their lives because of what happened in the past. So they're getting drawn back in. I think that there's 2 issues. One, I think by far the most interesting character is Jenna, I think is her name. She's by far the most interesting point of view character. I wish it had just been in her point of view the whole time. I can kind of see why he wanted other ones, but I think he should have restructured so it was just her. I think that would have been more successful. The other thing is that it's got like flashbacks to what was happening in the group home back then, but the way that he transitions into them is like kind of clunky, so it's harder to follow when it's happening. And for this kind of book, it shouldn't be. Like, this is not like high art where like the, veil between past and present is, liminal and whatever. No, like, be clear, we're going into the past timeline. So I think that was the other weakness. So I gave this 3 stars, but it was very entertaining. So if you are looking for an entertaining secrets from the past conspiracy kind of thriller, Jenna, the reason she's the most interesting is that she became like a hit woman. And so she thinks she's getting drawn back into her, like, she's retired. So she thinks that the organization is drawing her back in. So like that kind of conspiracy element I think was really fun. So yeah, all in all, this was very entertaining, but just not as like technically sound as some of his other books have been, is my impression there. But that comes out in March, and I would recommend if you're looking for, airplane book kind of thing. Happy Places by Emily Henry. I did not love this. I gave this 3.5 stars because I think it is still well written and a well executed version of what it is. I, in retrospect, would give People We Meet on Vacation 3.5 stars now that I've read more from Emily Henry. And I think that Happy Places is much more like People We Meet on Vacation versus I kind of put Beach Read and Book Lovers together. So if you're a reader of her work, hopefully that kind of helps you see what kind of book Happy Places is. For me, I'm always a hard sell on a second chance romance. And this is a second chance romance. I tend to think that if you broke up, it was probably for a good reason, and probably you should just stay broken up. I kind of feel that way by the end of this book, but basically it's our main character has broken up with her fiance of a very long time, and she's going back to see her like old friends, and God, I'm struggling to even remember what happened in this. I did not love this was well done, but not for me. Like, it was not my happy place with trope sets, so it wasn't that memorable. And it was in the middle of me reading Robin Hobb when I read this, so I'm wondering if also the brain space I would have dedicated to really absorbing that book got dedicated to that series. But anyway, okay, so she's going back and she's pretending that they haven't broken up. So he's going with her. So it's like kind of a fake dating trope with a second chance romance trope. And this is just very introspective. This feels very women's fiction, which is no longer used, but this one, to me, more than any of her other books, did not feel like a romance. And that's really what I wanted from it. I think that the romance or the relationship in it is interesting and well executed, but this really feels like a woman finding herself and finding her place in the world kind of book. And it's very angsty. For me, too angsty. Now, for some of you, all the things I just said, you're like, ooh, yummy, yummy candy, I can't wait to read this. For me, it just wasn't what I want from a romance, and it wasn't enough of a romance. Of her books, I know that some romance readers feel like her books just never are romances or never romance enough, and I would disagree. Personally, I think People We Meet on Vacation, again, to me is the most on the bubble of the previous ones I've read. But for the most part, I would stand by that the first 3 I've read from her are romances. This is the one where I'm like, I'm with you. I don't know. Even though I think this is probably the most sex heavy book, maybe? I don't know. God, now like all these books are just blending together in my mind. It's making me think maybe I don't like Emily Henry as much as I think I do. Anyway, I'm having an existential crisis even as I'm talking about this. All this to say, it was fine. It was good. It was a well-executed version of what it was. Emily Henry, I really like her writing. So even if it wasn't a romance, I'm still happy to have read it. But it is probably my least favorite of her ones that I've read so far. And I'm just gonna leave it there because clearly I'm just like not in a good place today to remember what I think about Emily Henry in totality. This felt like a mess. Hopefully editing Mara made that make some kind of sense. Okay, so that was the second arc I read. And then Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. This is a debut, and I want to tell you guys, I think this is a very strong debut. I would put it at like a 3.5 verging to a 4, but I will stick with a 3.5 because I felt like the way the story wrapped up was just not satisfying in terms of didn't really explore all the implications that the book had previously set up. But I do think that the writing and themes of this are really lovely, but it is a thriller, not a horror novel. I was expecting a horror novel, and it's not. It's really a thriller. So just know that in terms of your expectations, there are some horror elements, I would say, or like horrifying, maybe like a thriller with horror elements is the genre here. Basically, this is a very similar story in some ways to Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley, because it's a thriller about missing Native women and girls and kind of like the conspiracy that may be going on around that. Our main character, Anna, is twin-spirited. I thought that was an interesting angle. So that's why I would put it more in a B+ range than an A- range. But I think that this was a really good debut. I would read more from this author, and if any of the things I said sound interesting, I would definitely recommend picking this one up when it comes out in April. I think it's a pretty well done version of what it ultimately was. Okay, so that's all the stuff I've read so far. I've gotten a lot done, and like I said, this has been so good. So many high ratings this month. In terms of what I'm currently reading, my current book that I'm listening to while I'm sewing is Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism. I think that's what it's called. Very interesting book. Provocative title that I think the author is doing a pretty good job to substantiate. So I am enjoying listening to that. And then I'm in the middle, like I mentioned earlier, of Drakkar, which is the 4th book of the 7 books in the Honey Phillips series that I'm enjoying. So good palate cleansers there. Am I currently reading anything else? I don't think so. I think I've got the audiobook and the ebook going. So let's talk about what I'm going to read next. So my Patreon book club this month is for A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher, which I read in December, I think. And I gave this as one of their options, and this is what they voted on. So I'm rereading this, which is an absolute joy because, as previously established, T. Kingfisher is a new favorite author of mine, and I am very happy to be rereading such a delightful little gem of a book. So I need to reread that before book club. Oh yeah, and then I have my other advanced reader copies that I should or would like to get to this month. I may not get to some of these ones that come out in April, but I'm trying to get through all of my, ideally I would be through all of my April arcs by the end of February, so that then I'm officially 2 months ahead, because I personally find that less stressful to stay about 2 months ahead. But if that doesn't happen, as long as I get through my March ones, I'm doing okay. So, Adventures of Amina Al-Safari is one I have. I've been putting that off because it's a HarperCollins title, and I told them I would do a review, but I don't want to do the review while we're waiting for the contract to be signed. So hopefully the contract will get signed so that I can read that book. I've got Lone Women by Victor Laval, which I'm very excited about. It seems like it's kind of a horror thriller situation, and I'm doing that as a buddy read with Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany, Angela from Literature Science Alliance, and Jocelyn from Yogi with a Book. So very excited for that one. That I'm going to start actually probably tonight because we're buddy reading it this week. I've got a sci-fi one called Camp Zero that I think is like a dystopia. I can't remember, but I remember being very intrigued by the setup when I requested it. But it's some kind of either sci-fi or dystopia. So I think that one's an April title, so a little bit of a stretch goal. In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune is a gay romance retelling, fantasy retelling of the Pinocchio story with automatons. So I'm very excited to see how that ends up going. And then Death of a Bookseller, I can't remember who the author is, but this seemed like a really interesting mystery that comes out in April. And it's, if I'm remembering rightly, I think it's got some kind of like meta element, but even if it doesn't, murder mystery bookstore equals something that I tend to be very excited about and eager to love. So those are the advanced reader copies I'm going to try to read. Then the book I just unwrapped for my wrapped TBR. Where is it? I think luckily I picked one that is pretty light because I could use some more palette cleansers in here. But The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman. So this was my unwrapped book for the month, and so I am planning on reading that. It's like a contemporary, I think this might be sort of like a sort of women's fiction with a strong romantic element, perhaps. I think it's like about her finding a new family she didn't know she had and kind of coming out of her comfort zone. So I've heard good things, and that is my unwrapped book. And then this is the part where we'll see what happens, but this is a stack of books that I am reading for a project, for a video you guys will see. And a lot of these are pretty light, so that's the only reason that I have any hope that I might get through all of these. We will see. So let's just run through them all quickly, shall we? First, we have a fantasy manga called Witch Hat Atelier Volume 1 by Kamomi Shirahama, I think is how you say the author's name. So this is pretty short and supposed to be just an absolute delight. Then we have a sci-fi novel called The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. I think that this is like a we're off on a ship about to settle a new world kind of thing. So yeah, there's that. We've got Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, which is a fae cozy fantasy, potentially with some romance elements in it. I'm not sure. We've got The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sanju Mandana. And this is another cozy fantasy pick that I've heard is just an absolute delight. We've got The Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel, which is a sci-fi dystopia kind of thing, I believe. This won the Goodreads Choice Award for sci-fi, but I think it's more like literary sci-fi. We've got Out There by Kate Folk, which is a collection of speculative, like sci-fi-y kind of short stories. We've got The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha Filia, which is a literary short story collection, but pretty small. Her Majesty's Secret, not Her Majesty's Secret Coven, Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson, which is another somewhat cozy, but I think it's kind of closer maybe to The Rook, story about a secret magical society. Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabashig Rice. And this is, I think, somewhere between dystopia and horror. And I think it's set in like a remote reservation. I don't know. I've heard great things about this from lots of different people. The Last Quintista by Donna Barber Iguera. And this is a middle grade sci-fi. I didn't realize how much sci-fi is in this, but okay. Middle grade sci-fi that is a Newbery medalist. So you know it's got to be good. And this is another one where I think it's like we're traveling in space to settle a new planet kind of a thing, if I'm remembering rightly. And then last but not least, we have Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This is a thriller that is like playing with time travel, I believe. And I think like every time the main character wakes up, they're in a different time, maybe? I don't know. We'll find out, won't we? So yeah. Now that I'm actually going through all this, I'm like, I don't think I'm getting through all of this month, but we're gonna try. We'll see what happens. Gonna give it a good old college try. Yeah, I think that will do it for me. I feel like I was very all over the place in this, so hopefully some of this made sense a little bit, maybe. You guys can let me know. Let me know what you thought about any of the books I talked about. Let me know what you are excited about reading this month or how your reading month is going. Let me know that in the comments below. And yeah, I think that will do it for me. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon.